everyone. Welcome to today's college information session with Colgate. I'm here with my colleagues, Christina, Dwayne, and Jackie, as well as Brittany Darrow, who's going to represent Colgate this morning. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you, Brittany.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I'm excited to share some of my morning with you guys. I know that, virtual sessions can only do so much, but I think they are really helpful to be able to have a conversation. And I'm excited to talk about Colgate. I actually do have a PowerPoint presentation, so I'm going to share that right now with everyone on the screen. Great. And so I'm going to, can everyone see this?
Yes.
Awesome. So I'm going to go through, that's not what I want to do. I'm going to go through this presentation and talk to you guys a little bit about Colgate and then open up some time to have some discussion and some questions. I think the first thing that I want to talk about is just who I am. And so as you mentioned, my name is Brittany Darrow. I'm an assistant dean of admission at Colgate. I work with students both in the United States, but also some of our international students as well. But I'm also, more importantly, a Colgate alumni. So I graduated from Colgate, class of 2017. I was an international relations music double major, which is kind of a weird combination. I'll talk a little bit about kind of how Colgate allowed me to do that. But again, as we go through the session, I'll talk about some general information, share my own perspective and experience, and then if you have questions, I'll make a lot of time at the end for those questions. So why don't we get started? I think the first thing that I want to talk about is just what it means to be a liberal arts institution. I usually start my sessions by saying Colgate University is a private liberal arts institution located in Hamilton, New York. But, what does it actually mean to be a liberal arts school? Well, at some institutions, you will have a student that arrives that says, I'm interested in being a doctor. And so they'll apply to the medical school, and then they'll take classes primarily in medicine. They'll leave, they'll go into, a PhD program or something like that, or a doctorate program. At Colgate, we do things a little bit different. In a liberal arts setting, we do things a little bit differently. And basically, our goal is to provide students with the same framework to go into career paths that they're interested in, but we want students to take classes from a variety of academic areas. We want them to have flexibility and really identify their best fit. So when a student applies to Colgate, they're just applying to our institution as opposed to separate schools or majors or tracks. And again, there's a lot of flexibility in that system. And so again, liberal arts, you're taking a diverse number of classes. You're getting a lot of different perspectives that you can bring with you to a career path that you identify later on. So the first thing that I kind of spoiled a little bit is that every student arrives to Colgate undeclared. So in our college application process, when we evaluate students, we evaluate them holistically, and we are not placing them in programs or majors. You could write your entire application about how you want to be a lawyer and come to Colgate and study art and art history. It doesn't matter to us. We want students who are excited about something and want to come here and take advantage of our classes, but we want you to have that space again to identify your majors or minors that are your best fit. So students do not have to declare a major or minor until their second semester of sophomore year. And so again, that gives them a lot of time to think things through. And we have a lot of majors and minors. So if you look here, we've got 56 majors and 9 additional minors. It's a long list. If you've ever heard of astrogeophysics, that is a major on Colgate's campus. We have students studying 5 different types of environmental sciences. We have a variety of majors in the humanities, as well as things called university studies, which are unique to Colgate. So things like museum studies is one of them. LGBTQ plus studies. Those are some examples. There's a full list of all of our majors and minors on our website. And if you have any questions about if we have a particular one, I'd be happy to answer that. later on. But if you look at that list, you'll notice again things like medicine, business, law, engineering, communications. These are not specific majors. These are not specific tracks. We believe that a student who wants to go into business may want to study economics, but they might also want to study history or Chinese or computer science. So we have advisors, we have pre-professional boards who get students into those fields, but we are not going to say you're a business student, you can only take classes that are labeled business. In terms of our actual faculty, we have 300 plus faculty on campus, and almost all of them are going to be PhD professors. Occasionally we'll have one professor that's in a really specific field, and that's why they may not have a PhD. But basically this means that all of our professors are the best of the best. I love to talk about one of my favorite professors on Colgate's campus, Professor Danielle Lupton. She is a brilliant, brilliant professor in political science, and the things that she'll be talking about when she's featured on TV or in her books or in her articles is the same material she shares with us in the classroom. So these professors are really, really top notch. And 23% of our current faculty are faculty of color. We are looking to increase that number in the coming, that percentage in the coming years, so that we can really diversify the types of classes that are taught at Colgate. Now, something I love to touch on is the fact that our average class size is 17, and that is across the board. So, you know, it's not just, oh, all of the music classes are 10 students and all of the bio classes are, you know, 150. It really is 17 across the board. We have, I can only think of like 4 or 5 really huge lecture classes, and by huge I mean somewhere between 75 to 100. We really, really want students to feel like they are an individual in the classroom and that their voice, their questions, their perspectives matter. And so in the classroom, by keeping that size so small, your professor will get to know you, they'll want you to talk in class, and you may even have a really great connection with a professor. So I had many experiences where, you know, we'd be talking about something in class, I'd be really excited, and my professor would say, well, hey, you know, I have 15 minutes, let's go back to my office and keep talking about it, or here's a book that I recommend. Or they'd know about my other major and they'd say, hey, you've got this event coming up, that's exciting, I'll try to show up. So that small class size really allows for those kind of close interactions. And a large portion of our faculty actually live in the surrounding area, so they are really accessible. The other kind of staple of a liberal arts experience, but particularly one at Colgate, is taking advantage of experiences outside the classroom. So off-campus study and research. Now I know all schools offer opportunities for off-campus study and research, but I would identify maybe 2 things that make Colgate special. The first is the fact that first year and sophomore students can actually take advantage of these things. So I did a study abroad trip called an extended study. These are shorter trips, typically 2 to 4 weeks. I did one of those during my first year and my sophomore year over our summers. And then I finished up with one more as a senior as well. So I actually traveled to 8 different countries as a Colgate student and didn't even do a full semester abroad. If you're interested in a full semester abroad, we have quite a few programs. Some of them are Colgate programs, some of them are with other institutions, but the ones I like to highlight: National Institutes of Health in Bethesda, Maryland. We're the only institution in the country that sends undergraduates there to study and do research. University of Wollongong in Australia, get your scuba license, spend some time in the reefs over there. We also have a number of students who will go to London. We actually have 3 programs that do that. And then we actually have a shorter trip where we send students to Antarctica. So all 7 continents are covered at Colgate. The Antarctica trip, I will admit, I didn't know if it was real or not, but I looked it up, and Professor Leventer, and then we have a second professor this year who has been offered a grant to take students on that trip. So it's really, really exciting stuff. And then The same goes for undergraduate research. So again, first years and sophomores can take advantage of that, and many will apply to do research on campus. The other thing that makes us unique is, again, we're a smaller school, so we can tailor things to students' needs and interests. So if a student wants to do an off-campus study program and they want to do it in their sophomore year so that they can go on a language program, or they want to do an additional extended study, but we usually have students do one. We can make accommodations for that because you're having one-on-one conversations. And then with research, we have plenty of students who develop their own research projects. And that's very uncommon for particularly first years and sophomores, but occasionally we have it happen where a student proposes an idea, gets a professor's support because they've already met in a class, they already know each other really well, and so that's something that's really special. If you do have questions about academics, again at the end, I'd love to touch on particular majors or any of those experiences a bit more. Great. Now, I think something that's really important to talk about, but also maybe a little unfortunate, is post-grad. We at Colgate want students to enjoy their 4 years and really feel connected to the community, but we also do need them to be thinking about, what will I do after Colgate? And thankfully, Colgate students are quite successful. You can see here, and there's like a lot of information on this slide, but in particular, 98% of students from the class of 2018 reported being full-time employed in graduate school or doing some significant volunteer work, and that's actually within 6 to 10 months, so a little bit less than a year, that those students had a post-grad track. And the same statistics were for my class year, the year beforehand, and this is really strong. I mean, that's almost 100% of our students, and I think that that's really a testament to how much students are growing and learning on our campus, but also the fact that we have a really strong professional network. Career services is another thing that first years and sophomores can take advantage of. And so you'll actually see first years, for example, doing a shadowing program or connecting to try and do an internship in their first or second summer. We want every Colgate student to leave with at least 2 professional experiences, so that their resume is ready for whichever path they want to take. Typically at Colgate, most students are going into the workforce first, and then looking for a graduate program. But the nice thing about Colgate, in particular career services, is they have support for alumni as well. So even after you've graduated, you can come back to Colgate, get support, whichever track you're taking next. So I think that's great. And this is really a staple of the liberal arts as well, because maybe you're a student that says, hey, I'm interested in medicine. Medicine's a broad field. I wonder what I want to do. I had a student come into my office and say, I'm going to go shadow a surgeon, and I'm really excited. I said, great, let me know how it goes. They shadowed a surgeon. They came back and said, I don't like surgery. I need to figure something else out. And I think that that's a great discovery to make during your second semester as a first year, and not when you're getting your doctorate in medical school. So we really want students to have those experiences early on. And again, through our professional networks, we can really send students anywhere, whether it's, identifying an internship or a fellowship that's directly the field you're interested in, or even just finding alumni in your area. We have alumni all over the globe who are offering opportunities. So if you wanted to stay home and do an internship over the summer, that's something that we're able to accommodate as well. If you want me to talk about career services, I can do that too and talk a little bit more. Okay, so that's a lot of the kind of nitty-gritty academics, but who's actually on our campus? Who actually studies at Colgate? So we are a campus of just under 3,000 students, and we are primarily undergraduate. So we actually only have one grad program on our campus. That's why we're a university. And that is actually a master's in teaching and education. So some of our students will stay at Colgate for a 5th year and get their teaching certification and master's. But other than that, we really are focused in on those students where this is your first time outside of high school. This is the first experience you're having on a college campus. And we'll talk a little bit about what we do to help first years and sophomores adjust. Where are our students coming from? 49 of the 50 states. South Dakota has eluded us again. I'm really hoping this year to have a South Dakotan, so I can say 50 instead of 49, but we're working on it. And then currently we have 79 citizenships represented on campus, so 79 different countries. That number is steadily increasing. We think it's really important to have students from all over the globe because you can bring so many unique perspectives to the classroom. Currently, 22% of our domestic students, so non-international students, identify as domestic students of color. 9% of our students are first generation. We do have a first generation initiative. And then about 15% of our students are identifying as international or dual citizens. So that's a little bit of information about kind of who's on our campus, but if you wanted to learn a little bit more or particularly learn about people from your area, I can talk about that too. Where is Colgate and what is the campus like? This is always a funny conversation to have because I think sometimes students are a little concerned. They say, you know, what is Hamilton, New York? I've never heard of it. Where am I going? I think this is an amazing place to have a college campus. And I'm not just saying that because I'm an admission officer. You know, as somebody who attended this school and you know, spent 4 years as a Colgate student, I think that our location has so many benefits. And it's also just, it's beautiful. So I'm going to show first where we're located and then some pictures. So this red dot right here, this is Colgate. As you can see, we're kind of in the center of New York State. We're about 45 minutes from Syracuse, which is the airport that most students use. We do have shuttles that pick up students from Syracuse, take them to campus, and vice versa. So it's actually pretty accommodating. We're about 4 hours from New York City, and we do have a shuttle that goes to New York City every single day. And then you can see there are some other cities. So, you know, we definitely have our own spot, but I think we're actually more connected than people think, and it's quite easy to get around. But most people stay on Colgate's campus during the weekends and during breaks because there is actually a lot to do. So here's some shots of our campus, and I love to use the phrase that we are a filter-free campus. We really don't need you know, nice tricks and filters to show our campus. This is really what it looks like. This picture on the left is Person Hall, which is one of our academic buildings. There's a number of different social sciences that are taught in this space, and that Sky Bridge is where a lot of students will go to study, and you can kind of see the view of Taylor Lake, which is kind of the center point of our campus. And on the right, you can actually see Taylor Lake, and this is the Willow Path. The Willow Path is what really takes students into the town of Hamilton. And in the winter, we actually wrap like Christmas lights on the sides of the trees so that the whole path is illuminated. It's really, really beautiful. So I just like to show these pictures off. But here's a better shot of most of our campus, but there's actually some of our campus that you can't see. So on the right-hand side, we have some athletic facilities. So we are a Division I school. So D1 athletics is kind of surprising for a small liberal arts school, but we do take athletics very seriously. We have a current junior who's looking at an NBA draft for basketball. We've been really, really successful with football, lacrosse, hockey, and our student athletes are students first. So there's still, you know, leaders in the classroom, running clubs and activities. So if you guys had questions about athletics, I can talk about that. But as you can see, most of our campus is kind of focused on this spot that we call up the hill. And there is a hill, but I think Colgate students, we get used to it. And then if you were to go off to the left-hand side, there's some more housing, and then again, some paths into town. It's a big campus, and I think it's a really refreshing campus. It's nice to be able to step outside and breathe fresh air, go for a hike or a walk or a bike ride, and move around and enjoy the space. It really doesn't feel claustrophobic. It feels like your own little piece of paradise, which I think is super nice. And then just one more shot. You can see in this shot a little bit more back in the top left corner. That's where some of the athletic facilities are located. And this is actually from one of our traditions that we have for our seniors, where they carry a light or a torch down the hill to signify them going down the hill after they've gone up the hill. So the hill's very important to us. If you wanted to see all of our campus, we do actually have a virtual tour on our website. So you can walk around, take a peek. I know especially right now, since visiting campuses is kind of a taboo, you can take a look and see what we have to offer that way. One other thing that I want to talk about in terms of our location is the fact that we are carbon neutral. So Colgate is a school that's very, very concerned with sustainability, and we really, when you're surrounded by nature, you understand the importance of keeping that space sacred. So Colgate students worked with our environmental studies department and our office of sustainability to really achieve carbon neutrality, which means that our current carbon footprint is 0 net. For every amount of carbon we're emitting, we're either doing something physically on campus or with one of our offsets to reduce the carbon footprint of the exact same amount. So we're one of the first schools in the country to be able to say that we're carbon neutral, and you'll really find that throughout campus, students are recycling, students are carpooling or biking or walking to reduce that footprint. Students are doing research in the area to find more ways that we can keep this place clean and healthy and safe. So if you are somebody that's passionate about the environment and wants to, be on a campus that cares, I think this is a really good place for it. The last thing that I'd say is I've mentioned the town of Hamilton. It's so cute. It's really your typical college town. It's got different restaurants and movie theaters, and it's about a 10-minute walk from campus. So this is something I like to highlight, is that it's a really safe community. So students will walk down at midnight to go see a midnight movie screening, or walk back up the hill after dinner, or catch a cruiser, which is our bus system. But the town itself is really, really geared to providing ways for the people in the town of Hamilton to connect with current students. My personal favorite thing was the midnight movie screenings because they're free. So Colgate students can take their Colgate ID, they can get some pizza from the local place that they provide for free as well. And I saw all of the new movies that had just come out through this. I never had to pay for any of them. Some of the biggest showings that I saw as a member of the community, Black Panther was huge. All the Marvel movies and DC movies, everybody shows up for these sorts of things. So it's a couple hundred students, and the movie theater was recently renovated. So it's a super cute, old-timey theater on the outside, but the inside is really, really nice. So the town is great. There's some video as well on our website that shows off the town a little bit more. And then the other thing that's great about this location is that we have our students here. And I know that this is going to sound maybe kind of obvious, but Colgate is great because of the students that we have. And I think we have some of the best students. They're really, really passionate, not just about Colgate, but about having an impact on the local community, the global community. And so they're really active. Colgate students have a lot of fun, and I think that that's an important piece of your college experience, but they have fun in ways that really enrich the experiences of those around them. So some of the things that I would highlight, and again, there's some information here, 220 plus student clubs and organizations. We have a lot of activities, and that number consistently grows by the year. Some of my favorite clubs to highlight, we of course have things like Model UN, student government, debate, mock trial, but we also have things like a beekeeping association. We have as you can see here, 30 plus dance groups. The most attended event on Colgate's campus is Dance Fest, and that's at the end of every semester. These dance groups are amazing. You have things from ballroom and belly dance to K-pop and Latin American dance. There's really a nice variety, and it's again the most attended event on Colgate's campus. So we'll see 1,000 plus people show up physically, and then also people watch on our live stream. But some other clubs and activities. We have stand-up comedy, which I think is great. A very vibrant arts community. So if you are somebody that plays an instrument or sings or wants to be in theater, we're not known as art school, and I think we should be, because many Colgate students, even if they're not majoring in one of those arts majors, are actively involved in those clubs and activities. And then, we have a cheese and culture club. One of my kiddos from Savannah, Georgia, made it on our campus, and she came to my office to tell me, and she goes, "Yeah, it's cheese and culture club." I said, "Oh, that's fantastic. What is it?" And they basically eat cheese and talk to professors about different topics. It's such a niche club and activity, but again, we think it's important to have those so that students can form bonds and connections really early on. This is a campus where you don't have to, I know sometimes you feel uncomfortable about sharing your passion for juggling, but the fact is that on our campus, we have a juggling club. So, you can go to the campus and find those people that share those interests and really connect early on. I mentioned Division I athletics. Again, if you are a student athlete, there are just so many resources available to you, and you really do get to continue to be a Colgate student while also being an athlete. Both of my brothers are current Colgate students, and one of them, who's a senior this year, ran track all 4 years and was still the president of a club. He had a double major. He did research. So, being a student athlete does not mean that you won't get to do any of those things. Now, if you're like me and not athletic, we love to show up to these events, support our students. So if you're looking for that state school energy without, 30,000 people on campus, I think that that's something we can provide. And then the last thing I want to talk about, what makes the students so great, is the fact that they're all really connected to each other throughout all 4 years through our housing. So some places you might have housing outside of the campus or in the city or the nearby areas, but we guarantee our housing all 4 years, and just about 96% of our students are living in on-campus housing at any time, between 90 and 96. And then those students who aren't in on-campus housing are living in the town of Hamilton, which is, again, just about 10 minutes from campus. We think it's so important for Colgate students to feel deeply connected to each other and have a chance to, if you're having a great discussion in one of your classes, or, you want to work on your club or activity outside of the hours, like, you should be able to come back to your common space in your dorm, or, sit down together and cook a meal or have those conversations and not feel as though you're isolated from your classmates. So we do have a residential commons, which for our first years and sophomores helps to really acclimate first year and sophomore students to the college experience, and make you not feel alone and make our campus feel like a home and not just a school that you're getting your degree. But I think that our students are so great that our juniors and seniors are the ones that are really taking the charge and the lead to make those new students feel welcome. And when you live in a residence hall, you'll have a CL or a community leader who is maybe a senior and will knock on your door and just say, "Hey, I heard you're interested in economics. I'm studying it. Let me help you." Or, "Are you having trouble finding a club? Let me help you." So I think that sense of giving back and caring for others is really an identifying factor of a Colgate student. So if you want to learn more about housing or clubs and activities, I can talk about that too. Now, this is just kind of a quick panel because I've heard a couple questions from people who know something about Colgate or have only heard about us from our emails or anything like that. The first one is, what is this about the number 13? So Colgate actually has 13 as our lucky number. So a lot of places, 13 is bad luck. Friday the 13th, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be cursed all day. We are the complete opposite. So Friday the 13th is Colgate Day. 13 is our lucky number. So when I see 13, I get excited. The reason for that being our lucky number is that when we were founded in 1819, it was by 13 men with $13 and 13 prayers. The number 13 shows up everywhere on Colgate's campus. Our address is conveniently 13 Oak Drive. Zip code is 13346. And again, as I said, Friday the 13th is Colgate Day. So while everyone else is having a moment and a little nervous at bad luck, we're celebrating, we're wearing maroon, and there's always different events every Friday the 13th. And then the question of, your Colgate, are you related to the toothpaste? The answer is yes, we are, but we are the OG Colgate. So William Colgate was one of the first donors who started to build our campus. We were originally called Madison University. And then after we received some more donations in 1890 from the Colgate family, we decided to honor that family by naming ourselves Colgate. And then afterwards, they made the company that we now associate with the toothpaste. So we were Colgate first. If anybody asks you, let them know. But the reason I bring these things up is traditions are really important to us. I've briefly mentioned our alumni, but we really, have such a long and interesting history. We recently had our bicentennial, so we turned 200, and that's 200 years of history that really we feel connected to. And so, there's a lot to learn about our history, and you can actually see some of it on our website. So if you are a history buff and you're interested, take a peek. Great. Now, I know I've thrown a lot of information at you guys about just Colgate in general, our programs, what I like about us, but I do think it's important to calm down for a moment to talk through the admission process, financial aid, and campus visit and things like that, because especially given how interesting these past few months have been and how many changes those are going to impose on this incoming, senior class. I want to talk through what our expectations are, what support we provide, and things like that. So the first thing to know, and I did briefly mention this before, is that Colgate does do a holistic application review process. So that means that we look at every single aspect of a student's application before we make a decision. So we understand that certain students may have a great GPA and maybe not so much on testing, or haven't had access to as many clubs and activities. We really look at every student at face value and try to consider all of those factors when we make a decision about them. And again, we're not placing you in a program, we're not placing you in a major, we're just reading you as a student. I think people should feel comfortable to share anything they'd like with us in the application process, but not feel that it's an expectation. So, we're human beings and we're reading your stories and confidentially learning about you. So you should know that, I do read applications for your area. And so if you did have questions, my contact info is at the end of this and you can reach out. Now, given this year and just how interesting everything is, Colgate has made the decision to go test optional for fall of 2021. This fall of 2020 for the 2021, release. And I think that has really come from the fact that, we know testing centers are closing and students may be trying to take exams online. So we, for this upcoming applicant year, will just be test optional to provide that kind of support for students. And we're also, still going to be looking for your high school transcript and the other pieces of the application, but we are going to take into consideration just what impact being in isolation and being at home for several months may have on what your junior year looks like. We do have some information in regards to AP classes that should be coming out soon, and where we'll be able to accept credits for those sorts of things, so you can keep an eye open for that. And then the other thing I'd say is that we do currently accept both the common application and the coalition application. So depending on which one you're using, we can take either one. Financial aid, this is something else that's really important to talk about. And I personally love to talk about because I was a student on financial aid at Colgate. Both of my brothers are currently students on financial aid at Colgate. Colgate is a school that offers 100% of a family's demonstrated need, and that is for all of our students, U.S. citizen, non-U.S. citizen. If you are accepted to Colgate, we will use the CSS profile for all students, and then for U.S. Citizens, also the FAFSA, to determine a family's demonstrated need and meet 100% of that. So, you know, what that really means is that our average financial aid package per year is about $53,000. But if you're a student that needs 70,000 out of 75, if you're accepted, that is what your package will look like. And so I think that one of the things that I can only encourage students to do more and more and more is reach out to our Office of Financial Aid. They are some of the nicest people you'll ever meet, and they can really sit down with a student or with a guardian or a family and talk through, you know, let's see what a financial aid package may look like, so you can start to really understand and what that means for you. And I think it's important to know too that financial aid is not just something that's applicable to tuition and housing, but also things like study abroad. If you wanted to go on a study abroad trip, that financial aid package is going with you. For some of our students, there may be a financial burden to get to campus or come back. We do have a scholar program that provides assistance with that. So I highly encourage you, if you have questions about financial aid, speaking from someone who had a very hefty financial aid package, and you know, it really made it possible for me to go to Colgate. I think it's so important to have those conversations. The last thing that I would say about financial aid, and this is really big, is that we currently have a no loan policy for families that make 125,000 US dollars or less. So in the past, students in that bracket may have loans as a portion of their financial aid package. Now that loan would be supplemented with more of a grant. So please know that that is something we consider in financial aid as well. We do not do merit-based financial aid. We really put all of our money into that need-based package. So if you have outside scholarships like awards or things like that, you can bring those to Colgate, but all of our financial aid is need-based. And the last thing I would touch on is visiting campus. So we do not currently track demonstrated interest in our application process. So if you visit 7 times and interview twice, that's not going to have an impact on your application. But I do think it has an impact on you as a person and being able to envision yourself on a college campus. So we are, you know, currently figuring out when we'll be able to reopen for visits. Our hope is that, you know, over the summer we'll be open for a bit. But do know that we have a fly-in program called Colgate in Focus. And those applications are usually in July or August, and that program itself is in October. So if you wanted to learn more about that information, you can learn about the previous program from last year on our website. So you can see that there. Again, we do have a virtual tour as well. Great. We do offer virtual interviews as well and virtual information sessions. So right now, if you wanted to learn about us more in depth, you can actually use those. But I think that's kind of where I want to pause. I do want to say, you know, I have this, my contact information right here. If you wanted to be added to our mailing list so that you're always aware of what's going on campus or any programs that we're doing or virtual sessions, please send me your first and last name, your high school, the year that you're graduating, and then also any academic interests or majors. And I can actually add you to our system so that you can start getting some emails from us. If you wanted to get paper mailings, you can share your home address as well. But I'll leave that up for just a second so that you guys can, I don't know, see it, take a screenshot, whatever you need to do. But I kind of want to just turn it over. We've got about maybe a little under 20 minutes left. Turn it over to questions and see what you guys want to learn from me.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I just wanted to ask a couple follow-up questions about your application. Do you have multiple application deadlines?
Yes, so sorry. So we have 3 ways that students can apply. The first is early decision 1, that is November 15th. It's a binding agreement. It says, I love Colgate, I'm excited to come to Colgate. Those decisions go out mid-December, so we try to do it within the month. And then, of course, if you're accepted, that's a binding agreement, and we're excited to welcome you to Colgate. The next deadline that we have is January 15th, and this is for any student who's applying as a first year for the incoming year. If you apply January 15th and then just leave your application as it is, then you're a regular decision applicant. You'll find out towards the end of March what your decision is, and then you have until May 1st to deposit to Colgate. But occasionally what we'll have is a student who applies January 15th, gets one more chance to do a virtual interview or visit or send some emails, and then they feel more confident about attending Colgate, and they can actually convert their application to early decision 2. And so that can happen up until March 1st, and we try to get those decisions out as quickly as possible. So usually 2 or 3 weeks, as long as all the materials are in. I think it's important to know that about 55 to 60% of our students are either early decision 1 or early decision 2 students. And again, we don't track demonstrated interest, but early decision is a way to say, I'm confident that I'm going to have a great impact on your community and I'm ready to come. I always encourage students to have that conversation with financial aid first, talk to professors, talk to current students, talk to me or another admission officer, just because I know early decision is something that's really daunting and scary for some. It was definitely scary for me, which is why I didn't apply early decision. But I think it's a really valuable way to apply to Colgate. So if you had questions about that, we are an open book and we want to be helpful with that.
Are interviews a required part of the application process?
No. If you interview with us, again, it's entirely informational. Our interviews are really fun, actually, because they're usually not with, an old person like me. They're with a senior, a current student, and you can have a casual conversation about what clubs they've been in, what they've studied, and also share your experiences as well. And our seniors are trained to know pretty much everything about our campus so that they can answer any of your questions. But again, it's informational. It's there to help you. It's not, it won't have any impact on your application at this time. Yeah.
Do you have any tips for students filling out the application?
Absolutely. I always get questions about, have I put too much on my application, or did I, students who will attach a resume and then they'll be concerned that I didn't want that, or I didn't want to know their story or things like that. Because we do holistic review, I always think more information is better. If you have an activity that you do at home, I know that sometimes if you're more introverted or you have home responsibilities, those may not look like clubs or activities, but I want to know about that, because if I know a student is working a part-time job for 20 hours a week, I understand that you're not going to be in 12 clubs. So, but if you don't tell me about that, then I don't have that context. And again, I think it's so important to know that, only share the stories or the clubs and activities that you're comfortable with sharing, but know that we are confidential. We're not going to go and share your information with others, but more is always better, in my opinion. The other thing I'd say is definitely, I think it's important to share your application with counselors or people in your life that you feel close with, to make sure that you feel like the application is selling yourself in the correct way. I always find students where, maybe they forgot to add something really, really important, and I don't learn about it until later, and maybe a counselor could have pointed that out beforehand or something like that. The other recommendation that I would give is with letters of recommendation. So Colgate needs 2 from teachers in core subjects in 10th, 11th, and 12th. as well as one counselor. We do accept external counselors, so somebody from, a CBO like you guys, we will accept that as a counselor letter as well. But think really critically about the teachers that you're choosing. We're not going to say, oh, if you're interested in biology, your professors have to come from science or they have to come from foreign language. But, make sure that the teachers you're picking are ones that you feel a really close connection to and are really going to be able to advocate for you in a really strong way, because we do read them. So those are the recommendations. I know I gave a lot of them, but those are some of the recommendations that I would give.
Great, thank you. Can you tell us why you decided to enroll at Colgate?
Absolutely. I think this is a funny story because it's I feel like it's any guidance counselor's nightmare. So I applied to 9 schools without telling my guidance counselor. I actually attended 2 high schools at once. One of them was a music conservatory. The other one was my public high school. And I was also an athlete. So I was just not a good one, but I was an athlete. And I was just so busy and so overwhelmed. And my parents didn't know really much about applying to private schools at all. One of them didn't go to college, the other one didn't really know much. So I just kind of threw caution to the wind. I applied to some schools and I got into them, and then I said, well, darn, what do I do now? And I actually had an interaction with our vice president of admission and financial aid, Gary Ross, who came out to me and was basically like, oh, you're the opera girl. I'm excited for you to sing on campus. And I was like, how do you know who I am? Like, what's going on here? And he basically came out to me and said, take a chance on us. If you hate Colgate, my office is open. You can come in and tell me why you hate Colgate and I will help you find somewhere else. But just take the risk. And, between that and the fact that I was getting, a significant financial aid package, much more so than even the state schools that I was looking at, where everyone told me that was the cheapest option. I said, you know what, I don't have much to lose. Let's see what happened. And I got to campus and I was pretty negative about it, if I'm being honest. It definitely wasn't what I typically envisioned myself going to. I was like, oh, I'm going to live in a city and I'm going to hang out with all my friends in the city, and what is the school and nature and all this sort of stuff. And I was also an introvert, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna have to talk to people, this is terrible. But the second I arrived on campus, I was moving my stuff in to my dorm, and I'm originally from Rochester, New York, which is not really a place where you leave stuff lying around, and people take things without permission once in a while. But a group of guys came and started grabbing my boxes. So I assumed I was being robbed, and I'm like, what's happening here? And they were the football team, and they came early to campus to help first years move in. And since I was moving in earlier than everyone else, they saw me, they ran over, and they moved all my stuff up. And from that moment, I started to realize, like, okay, maybe there is a community here. Maybe there is something that I can get excited about. I ended up working in admission to learn more about Colgate and like figure out where I actually picked. Ran into Gary, he immediately remembered who I was. And so I started to really feel strongly about Colgate from that point. As I mentioned, both my brothers are here. I wouldn't let them come to a college if I didn't believe that it would be a place where they could have a good time and feel safe and enjoy themselves. And they've both really grown a lot. And Gary's my boss now, so that's an interesting turn of events as well. He's the one who offered me, my position. So it's really it's all kind of gone full circle. But I'm not a great example. I think you should do your research and visit campuses if you can, all that sort of stuff. But even coming here randomly and kind of with a negative opinion, I really grew to see Colgate as my second home. This is my home.
Awesome. So we have a couple questions about campus culture. So particularly in the South, a lot of these older institutions have histories of, racial violence and things like that. And that causes tension on campus now. Does Colgate have any of that going on? And if so, how has the university responded?
Sure. I think we're like most colleges in the US where, particularly schools that are predominantly white institutions, students of color have a lot of things that they want to see changed and should be changed. And we've definitely had, I know my sophomore year, we had some protests in admission. We've had some events, some outreach, some activism pretty much every year consistently. The thing that I think stands out for me as somebody who participated in those events and those conversations was one, the support from professors. I know, for example, not giving any opinions or anything like that, but after the 2016 election, many professors reached out and said, if you're having a rough day today, don't come into class. You're not going to be penalized. Go to, I know right at midnight, we had the president of the campus, who actually talks to students one-on-one all the time, open up our science center, and we all went down there, and there was a mic and people just talked. And you know, with our protests as well, we've seen tangible change come out of those. So one example is Haven, which is a space on campus that we did not have until students asked for it. And it's basically a support center for those who are coming to campus or have experienced sexual violence. And so that's a really a space that we didn't have, and students were like, why don't we have this? And now we do. And so I think that, you know, no institution is perfect, and we certainly aren't, but, you know, people care, and people speak about what they care about, and they don't get silenced either, which I think is, you know, I can share my opinions on things, which I think, you know, is surprising. And, you know, students will ask, like for me, like, where do I get my hair done? And I'm like, okay, let's have a conversation about that. Like, we can be honest about those sorts of things and have serious discussions. With that being said, from my personal experience, I was really excited by the number of cultural groups on campus that I was able to join. And also, I think there are some amazing communities that are very, very welcoming for a student that's uncomfortable when they first arrive. In particular, International Office of International Student Services is open to all students. It's a really comfortable environment. The chapel, Colgate's non-denominational, so we don't have a religious affiliation, but all of our religious students use the chapel, and our atheist students as well. And if we don't have something that can accommodate to your specific religious needs, we'll make it happen. It's also an LGBTQ plus space that's safe. We are a really, really passionate LGBTQ plus community. So we do have a center for gender studies on campus, but also we offer gender neutral housing, gender neutral restrooms. Students can identify very easily on their portal their pronouns, their preferred name, and that's all a professor will see. So, you know, those are also things that came out of student activism and being like, we need these, and they happened. And the last thing I would say is that, you know, thinking economically, you're definitely going to come to campus, and if you're someone like me who's never owned a Canada Goose jacket, which is kind of like the infamous expensive jacket, you know, you'll definitely look at it and be like why? You know, being totally honest, you'll be like, you know, I could never afford to have a jacket like that, or like, why is that the way it is? But you know, those little things were things that I was able to, they didn't impact my overall experience. Those people wearing those jackets still wanted to come and talk to me and ask me, you know, have serious conversations with me about race and identity and sexuality. So even though they were coming with different, you know, levels of privilege, most of those students still recognized that and wanted to be a part of those communities and those spaces. So again, I think we're growing, I think we're evolving, and I think we're headed in a really positive direction.
Sorry, I was muted. Thank you. Let's see. Does non-US citizen for financial aid include DACA recipients and undocumented students?
Absolutely. Yep.
Awesome. Do you have fly-in programs for college advisors or counselors at CBOs?
Yes, so we have done some. We usually do them over the summer. I don't know what's going to happen with them this year, if I'm being honest, but we do definitely do them, and I can make sure that you guys are on that list, because we love bringing you guys, and I think we have a lot of fun, but also we try to be as hands-off with that as possible, so you're spending more time with students and professors so that you guys can ask really honest questions and get all the information you need. So I can definitely add you guys to that list. I just don't know if it's happening this summer, which is probably a no.
Awesome. So I think our last question, can you explain your transition experience to Colgate and any resources that you use that were helpful for you?
Absolutely. So my experience in high school was very difficult. I was the only student of color in my public school. I dealt with a lot of judgment and people who were not super nice because of my identity. So coming to Colgate, I definitely immediately wanted to reach out to my freshman seminar professor. Every student has one. They start as your advisor. And they were somebody who just kind of helped me feel better about what I'd gone through and like helped me to, feel confident that I deserved to be at Colgate and I deserved to have the experiences of every other student there. So every student has one of those advisors. The other advisor you have is a link staff, which is an upperclassman, usually a senior, who basically helps you with all of the like student side of things, like how do I get a work study job? How do I make friends? Which dining hall is better? My link staff in particular was really, really impactful on me, and she spent a lot of time just kind of guiding me through that first year, especially. The other resource that I took advantage of, and I'm totally comfortable saying, is kind of our counseling center. So we do offer anonymous counseling as well as, scheduled appointments and health and dietitians and things like that. But I think a lot of kids, in particular from my community and where I was coming from, you didn't talk about your mental health at all, which is not a good thing. You should always talk about it. And the same with, if you need access to tutoring or extra help or things like that, our writing center, all of those are available. For me, I use the counseling center, but I think, all of those resources are there, and it's sometimes hard for students to like walk in and have that first meeting, but I definitely forced myself to go over there eventually, and I was like, okay, let's talk. And they were really, really instrumental in helping me. The last I'd say is really the admission office. I know I'm like touting my own office, but like all of our doors are open. I have students come in and they just want to know like what's going on in the world. They're like, I heard admission does this. What's the truth? Or, I'm really frustrated with this thing that's happening in the world. Can I just come talk to you? Or I don't know what I'm doing as a first year and I'm really stressed. The admission officers get really attached to the kids that they meet in the process. So I talked to the admission team a lot. I was there every day. I worked there as a student employee, and they provided me a lot of that like comfort on those difficult days. So it's the same with some of our other offices, but I think admission in particular, just because we learn way too much about you. We read your applications cover to cover. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, I think that's all the time we have. Thank you so much for joining us today. It was really great to hear about Colgate. Would you mind putting your email in the chat box in case anyone has questions, or maybe sharing that slide again?
I would be happy to. I'll put it in the chat, and then I can also share with you guys the slideshow from today, just so you have it. So there's that. But no, thank you guys for, again. I don't want to take too much of your time, but I do really appreciate being able to connect with you guys, and I'm excited to see what happens next year, and hopefully I'll get to meet some of you guys.
Awesome, thank you. And if you attended this workshop today, just a reminder to please fill out our survey. I think I put the correct link below, Ms. Christina, if you want to double check that. If you fill out the survey, you will be in the running for a $20 gift card that we draw every week. Yeah, I did not do the link right. So the link at the bottom is the correct link.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Have a good one. Stay safe. Stay healthy.
Thanks.